Good morning, everyone. Good morning to Inspinar. This is our second episode of Inspinar. Inspinar is inspirational seminar, a 30-minute conversation created to empower all of us together with the roadmap for a more peaceful and productive life. I'm Dr. Nidhi Gupta, your host for Inspinar. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. I met Kristin a couple months ago when she invited me to speak on her Facebook Live event. Before I had met Kristin, I was procrastinating the launch of Inspinar. After meeting her, I was inspired and motivated to get over my inertia of launching Inspinar, and here we are. Therefore, it made perfect sense to have Kristin as my first guest on Inspinar. As I have gotten to know Kristin a little bit more recently, I learned that she is an accomplished athlete, an entrepreneur, a mother, and an advocate. I can't wait to hear Kristin's story, which is very well described by the title, Why Not Me? Kristin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I love that. And I'm honored, actually, that I am kind of what inspired you to start doing this. That's really, really cool. So thank you. I appreciate you having me. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get into it here. I'll give you kind of a little bit of background of kind of where I'm come from, I guess, kind of as a growing up, and then kind of to what I've sort of turned into now. So I grew up, I was a good kid. I am from Northeast Ohio. It was the 80s, the 90s. I really didn't get into much trouble. I kind of faded into the background. You know, we were that generation that just went out and played until the streetlights came on and then we had to come home. I had decent grades, but really, I think by all accounts, I was average. I was really nothing special. There was nothing about me that really stood out. I was pretty okay at sports growing up. I did and still do have a passion for environmental issues. But I think the one thing that maybe stood me out over a lot of others is how stubborn I was and still am. And that's a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. You're going to hear a lot of instances of my stubbornness, but how I've used it to kind of as a catalyst to get involved in other things. So after growing up, I went to college at Youngstown State University in Ohio. I majored in elementary education. And at that time, in my eyes, getting married, raising a family, having summers off with my kids was just the absolute ultimate dream. I couldn't imagine anything more amazing than that. And I remember I had a job interview once where a principal who was interviewing me asked me, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" And I was like, well, what kind of a question is this? Like, I just want to be a teacher. And I just looked at him and said, I just want to teach. And thinking back on that now, I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, I really should have had some higher aspirations. But at the time, that's really all I thought that would be it. Like, that was going to be life. I was going to be a teacher. I was going to have a family. I would retire from teaching. I would live happily ever after, and that would be the end of it. But now I see how naive I was. And probably not so shockingly, I did not get that job. However, right around the same time, within a month or two, I think, of that happening, I met my now husband. And after only dating for about 3 weeks, he asked me to move with him to Las Vegas. He was on his way to move. We're both from the same area in Ohio, but he, much like myself, was not very happy there. And so he was moving to Las Vegas where he had some family, and he asked me to go too. And I'm thinking, we've been together for 3 weeks. Like, who does this? Well, apparently I do this, because I was like, okay, let's do it. And they were hiring teachers there, and I was having a very difficult time getting a job in Ohio. They were actually laying off teachers in a lot of districts at that time. And in Vegas, though, they were growing so fast, they were giving signing bonuses to teachers and everything else. So I thought, okay, if I want to teach, then this is what we're going to do. Let's do it. And I was 24 years old at the time. And I got there, I was hired to help open a brand new elementary school. And it was in a very, very rough neighborhood. In fact, during the time that I was there, at one point, it was named the 6th most dangerous neighborhood in the United States. It was the children would come to us with stories that I, from small town Ohio, couldn't believe was real life. You know, it was the kind of thing you only see on TV. And I loved those kids, and I felt needed. I felt like I was making an impact when I was there. However, my first year, I cried every single day. I could not believe how hard teaching was. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks. And then when I started my second year, I started a master's degree to get out of teaching, but I only made it one semester, and then I changed my major to my first master's is in teaching English to speakers of other languages. And we also got engaged that year, so that was exciting. So obviously I changed my major back into education, so I stayed. And I stayed at that school even, as difficult as it was, I loved it. So I stayed there, and a whole lot of life happened while I was there. I got married, I had my son. I changed jobs where I was a classroom teacher, and I became the building's math coach. Math is and was my specialty. The name of my business is Math and Macros. That's where the math comes from. So just a lot of things happened in the years that I was there. And during my pregnancy, and then immediately following, I started having a lot of issues with my right ankle. And it was an injury when I was 12 years old playing softball. And it turns out that arthritis had spread all throughout that joint, and I needed to fuse the joint in order to basically eliminate the arthritis to remove the pain. And that summer, thankfully, teachers have summers off, so I was able to have that surgery, and I was off my feet the entire summer, and then the whole next, basically until the first of the year, I was in a boot and with very limited mobility and things. And this caused me to gain well over 20 pounds, and I'm small, I'm only 5'1". So 20 pounds on a 5'1" body is a significant amount of weight. And I made a New Year's resolution that I'm going to lose this weight. So I started to count calories, and then over the next several months, I lost most of the weight again. So that was great. But a couple of years later, my dad passed away, and it was really hard being in Vegas, and all of my family is in Ohio, and I couldn't really help as much as I would like. And you know, it was very frustrating being far away and knowing that I had to leave. You know, I was only able to be there for that week or so, and I had to go back. Whereas if I lived closer, I would at least be able to interact with my family a little bit more at that time. So my husband and I decided that maybe, as much as we really truly loved living in Las Vegas, maybe that's not it. So we packed up and we moved ourselves back to this side of the country, where now we live in Nashville. So we're still not quite to the family, but we can at least get in the car and go. Whereas before, and especially these days, I think trying to find a flight back for a last minute emergency would probably, that just sounds like a nightmare. But we moved back, and I left that school where I was there for 11 years, and I was the last original staff member who opened that building. I was the last one who was still there. Everyone else had moved on. Most of them very early on, just because it was an extremely difficult, stressful place to be. But now we're in Nashville, and it is 2014, and I didn't really take steps to build a lifestyle around my weight loss. And so through the stress of moving and everything else, I gained almost all of that weight back. And also at that time, I had just completed my second master's degree in math curriculum. And, you know, physical activity, nutrition, these things were not my priority list at the time when you're trying to complete master's degree. And so also now I'm several years older than I was before. So there was the combination of my waist circumference and my age that put me in the extreme high risk category for heart disease, which we know is one of the main killers for women. And that was terrifying to me. My son's 8 years old at this point, and I was just imagining him without his mom, you know, and that was truly the worst thing that I could consider. So I decided to start trying things. I tried all these fad diets, you know, all of the cleanses and the detoxes and all of the things that we know don't truly lead to actual weight loss. Because of my ankle surgery, I wasn't allowed to run anymore, which I was somewhat of a runner prior to that, and I'm not allowed to really run much anymore. And I thought, okay, I can't really do exercise. What am I supposed to do? But that is when I very accidentally, to be honest, found strength training. And it's now 2017. And I think that this is sort of a very key point in my life for a lot of the things that I had done. And I think prior to this point, there was obviously a little bit of, I was a little bit of a risk taker. I think obviously, just moving to Vegas and everything else like I did, but I think strength training is really the key that pulled a lot of this out of me. And the only word I can use to describe my strength training journey is just the word power comes to mind, confidence and power. The confidence that I felt every time I was able to move up in weight on an exercise really spilled over into everything else that I did. Like I said, I think it was always kind of hidden in there, but it was really strength training that brought it out of me and gave me the confidence to start speaking up and to start questioning things that maybe I just thought, well, this is just how we've always done it, and so right about this time is when I started to learn more about women's rights and how women are very marginalized in our society, as evidenced by our pay gap, how women are spoken to, expectations on women that really aren't on men so much, not only as far as family roles go, but in the workplace as well. And I started to really notice that one of the reasons that teachers were and are treated the way they are and are paid as poorly as they are, to be honest, and teachers are always expected to just do more with less constantly. And I really started going, if we weren't a female dominated profession, would that be the case? And I don't think it would personally. And so that confidence that I had built in the gym started allowing me to speak out on these things, to start sharing my experiences and injustices and step up when I think that something isn't right. And the more I learned, the more I struggled with increasingly difficult student behaviors, from verbal abuse to physical abuse to sexual abuse in my classroom. Honestly, a lot of parents would be appalled at some of the stories that I could tell that I probably can't tell due to privacy or things, I'm sure, but it would be truly shocking, some of the things that I could tell you. Just the more these things happened, the more disenfranchised I felt and I got with teaching. And at that point, I'm frustrated. I'm definitely speaking out a lot. I'm out on the street with my signs, everything. And I had been strength training for a while at that point, and I learned about powerlifting and how I could compete in powerlifting. And powerlifting is basically where you lift as much as you can, and you compete against other people that are your age and in your weight class. So my 5'1" self, I'm not competing against the 300-pound guys, so it turned out that I was actually pretty good at it. And at one point in time or another, I've had 8 national records and 32 Tennessee state records in powerlifting, which blows my mind. And by taking opportunities kind of presented to me along the way, I'd already had my personal trainer certification and my nutrition certification. So I was working nights and weekends after I left school to be a personal trainer and a nutrition coach at a gym here in Hermitage. And then COVID came and I had more time. I was working from home now because we were all virtual teaching. And by removing that commute that I was taking to school every day, I had more time to be in the gym. And I just started really feeling my passion towards training women and in nutrition and kind of helping them feel that confidence that I felt when I started strength training too. And so I went back to teaching for only one more year. So that would have been 2020, 2021. And then last spring, I resigned from teaching after 18 years. And I decided that I was going to try to grow my business. And terrifying. completely terrifying. Especially after 18 years teaching, my identity was very wrapped up in being a teacher. And I had to take some time to sort of separate who am I outside of a classroom, because the teacher isn't who I am, it's what I am. And so, there was a lot of internal seeking going on at this point. And I think this big rule that I live by, especially now, and I think kind of always, is to have no regrets. And it helps me to try new things as often as I can, because really, what's the worst that can happen? I don't like it. And it's like, okay, well, now I know, but if I don't try, I'll never know. And so I felt like if I didn't just give this a shot to open up this business and see what I could do, then I would always wonder, what if I would have done that, And so just having those what ifs is my worst fear. And I do everything I can to avoid the what ifs. And this mentality that I have built has grown all because I started to lift weights thanks to that ankle surgery that I mentioned earlier. Who would have ever thought at that time? I never would have dreamed that all of those things would have taken place and gotten me to this point. But as my body grew stronger, my mind grew stronger, and my confidence grew stronger. And I started to see a lot of exciting opportunities, and I was brave enough and willing to take action on them. And I think that's the key, is a lot of us have these opportunities presented, but we either stall or we just get scared and it passes us by. So it's just being brave enough to find it and go for it. It's scary and it's uncertain, but it's amazing. And I personally couldn't imagine living any other way at this point. In just a couple of months, I'm going to be competing at a powerlifting meet in St. Louis, Missouri. It's the North American Championship, and I'm going to be trying for some world records. And who would have ever expected that quiet, not so special girl from Northeast Ohio would do all of these things? I look back and I think, who am I? How does this even happen? But it's just been a matter of taking opportunities as they're presented and being willing to put myself out there and being willing to fail. And I've learned to see failure as not a negative. I've learned to see it as an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to learn something new, either about myself or about whatever the thing is that I failed at. And I'm okay with it. And it's, that's taken a lot, and that's really hard. In powerlifting, we always have to get to a point where we fail. That way we know truly how much weight we can lift. And so that has really allowed me to see a lot of things in that light where, say the small business thing doesn't work out. Well, that's okay. I'm going to learn a ton from it, and I can always go back to teaching if I wanted to. So why not just give it a try, So, I ended my little thing here. I'll just go ahead and read it. It said, I'm small. I'm a small human, but that doesn't mean I'm not strong. I'm a woman, but that doesn't mean I don't have opinions. I'm a mom, but that doesn't mean I don't have my own goals. And I'm so many things, but also at the same time, I'm so much of the opposite of those things all at once. And I just kind of want everyone to know and understand that we should never underestimate ourselves and never think I can't do that or I shouldn't do that, because you truly have no idea what you're capable of. And until you finally will just stop and ask that question that we started with, which is, why not me? Why can't I be the one that does it? Why can't I be the one that sets that record? Why can't I be the one that builds this small business? Why shouldn't I just try and see how it goes? And I personally just strive to live a life of no regrets, because, like I said, that's my worst fear. And I don't see why, if someone else can do it, why can't I do it too? So that's.
Wow, that is fascinating on so many levels, Kristin. And as I was listening to your story, I felt my own story reflected in your life in so many different places. I was like, gosh, how can our stories be so similar? And we've known each other for 2 months only. So you were not an athlete up until your mid-20s, right?
Right. Yeah. In high school, I played sports in high school, but I actually didn't start lifting until I was 38 years old.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't start powerlifting until you were 38 years old. And
Right.
now you are national record holder and Tennessee record holder, and you will have a competition coming up in November. During this journey, in these last few years, did you meet people who projected their own fears onto you and thought you were crazy for taking on something as bold and as challenging as powerlifting at an age of 38, when most athletes in the world are starting to think about retirement?
Mhm.
How did you clear your mind space when people projected their own fears onto you? And how did you convince yourself that I'm just going to not bother about what everybody else around me does or says? This is me, this is who I am, and I can do this and I will do this. What goes on in your mind at that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the feedback I was getting from people is so many people were convinced I was going to get hurt because of my age, because I'm small, because I'm a woman. Honestly, they don't generally say these things to men. And and it's kind of the same thing that I tell people right now. I said, honestly, I feel like what's far more dangerous than lifting weights is being weak. And I think that that's not only for my health, but just from a physical perspective. I mean, we just had this Liza, I think was her name, in Memphis, who was just kidnapped out running. And, it's a scary world sometimes. And I think that being strong and being able to hold my own gives me confidence everywhere I go. I feel comfortable. I don't get as afraid. I don't feel as nervous when I'm out in public, and there might be a certain situation. So that's sort of just what I would tell people, is like, I would way rather be strong than to be weak. And I know I had a coach, I still do have a coach, and I am a coach myself. So, I understand limitations, and it's really all about doing it right and not doing too much too fast to where they get hurt. And I think what's funny is that when I first started my first competition, my coach was like, you could have records now. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, that made no sense to me. But what's funny is, in that first competition in Tennessee, there was no one that had ever done it before. There were no records. So I literally I could have shown up there and picked up 10 pounds and I would have broken the record. So, there was, I think, a certain, I don't know if confidence is the word, but just knowing that I was the first one to do it was exciting to me, and that I get to set the bar, and for anyone who comes after me at this point. And so I think that helped a lot with the confidence too, was to know that I really don't have to go do anything crazy right now to do this, to accomplish this. So let me just do what I'm comfortable with and do what feels good. And then, obviously after that, I've had to up my game a little bit. But I think in the beginning, and when it all started, that was a big piece of it. That was exciting to me, that I could be the first in the state of Tennessee to do it at my age and in my size and my weight. So yeah, so when people were concerned, always worried, don't get hurt. And you also get a lot of the things where people think that when women lift weights, it's going to make them bulky and look like a man. And, we don't have the hormone makeup to do that. Obviously, I don't think I really look terribly manly at this point. I'm still a small 115-pound woman, but so I use it now as to turn it around and to show people that a lot of those things are myths and they're misconceptions. And the one thing far more dangerous than lifting weights is being weak. And so that's just what I do.
That's great. I have one more question, but before I ask that question, I'm going to see if anybody in the audience has any questions.
Sure.
You're muted.
I don't have a question actually, but I am impressed by your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, I met one of our family friends, and they had 2 daughters, and the mother shared her daughter's story with me. She said, my daughter one day was like in training in school in wrestling, And then when she came home, then she said that I said, you can go into wrestling. The daughter was just offended and she said, you are, miss, she was not like in with the mom. After a few days, she says, Mom, can I go wrestling? And then she took lessons and she was very good at wrestling. And then she joined a firefighter work. And she said 100, I think 100 kg or somewhat like 85 kg coach who was training her, she lifted him on her shoulder and got to the stairs like on the firefighting stairs, right? Then her mother was like, wow. She says, when I see the video carrying the man on the shoulder and going, I get scared. Then she says, Mom, I can take you up. She says, no, you don't take me, please. I am scared. I will be scared. And the second thing now, the younger daughter is again following the same footsteps and she is also wrestling. Yeah. I was impressed by this story and I am highly impressed by your story as well.
Thank you. That's great. I love hearing about strong women. That's the best.
Yeah.
So when we hear about younger siblings following in older siblings' footsteps, that brings me to my second question, Kristin. I know your son trains. Are you his coach? And what are his goals and ambitions? What is he up to? How does powerlifting play a role in his life and in your relationship with him?
Great questions. I love talking about him. I could talk about him all day. So he's now 13. I'd mentioned earlier, he was 8 years old when I discovered that, all of these health issues that the path I was on. And so that's when I'd started lifting and things. And I tried like crazy to get him to work out with me. And he would do maybe one workout here and there, but he was far more interested in playing video games, or there were other kids at the gym that he would hang out with and talk. So it was more social for him. And it really wasn't until this past summer that he started to take it seriously. I had a competition in May, and there was a girl there who was 13 as well. And she not only got first placed in her weight class and age group, but she also set records. And it made he was sitting in the audience and he went, wait, like that's a thing? And I said, yes, that's a thing. I've been telling you all along, that's a thing. And so that's actually what inspired him to want to compete. And so I said, okay, I will coach you, but we made some ground rules. I told him he has to at least come into the gym 3 days a week. And he has to clean up his nutrition because powerlifters can't compete on Oreos alone. So, he knows, like I've been, protein is a very large part of my life. I'm always trying to find ways to make sure I'm getting my protein in, and my body is very reactive to carbs and things, especially more simple carbs. So it's something that is a conversation in our house a lot. So he knows, the fat, the carbs, and the protein and things. So he started doing a good job with it. And since that was in May, so once summer started, he has been into the gym 3 days a week, every single week. He has not missed one yet. And we went ahead and signed him up for his first competition in December. It's somewhere in the beginning of December, around the 10th, I think. And there was someone just a couple of months ago, another boy his age and weight, who set the records. And so now he's been working, he knows those numbers. So now he knows what he's aiming for. And it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun to watch him sort of change into getting more serious about it, because there's a true number and there's a true goal for him to hit. It's not just, I get to show up and I get a record, So it's been really fun. And he played baseball previously, and he was pretty good at baseball too, but he just sort of lost interest. So he is somewhat of an athlete already. But getting to see him in the gym and just watching his confidence and his competence in the gym, and knowing how to use machines and understanding how to, load the bars and things like that, is really cool for me to sit back and watch. And we get to just spend more time together too. And he has struggled a little bit with the dynamic of, when we are here in the gym, I'm your coach. I'm not mom anymore. I'm your coach. And You don't get to have a little snooty attitude with me like 13-year-olds can do, because this is a different relationship right now. So we've had to really define a coach relationship versus mom relationship based on what building we're in, pretty much. But he's done really good with it. Like I said, he has kept up with his training, and he's, I'll be honest, has already surpassed my expectations for him. I was taking it easy in the beginning, but he has just gone full force. And I think it's cleaning up his nutrition has made a big difference for him too. I'm a big proponent of, eating well, your body will serve you well.
There is something very powerful about being around a person who is on a mission, who has a goal. Your son has a goal and he is working towards that goal. So I can't imagine how powerful it must be for you as a mother and as his coach to watch him in that journey.
It's really cool.
That is awesome, Kristin. Thank you so much. Are there any last words that you would like to say to our listeners?
Oh, gosh, I don't know about last words. I think, I'll just kind of come back to what I'd said earlier. I think that always ask yourself, why not me? Like, why can't it be you that does all the things that you dream to do? If it could be the person next to you, it could be you just as easily. So go for it. You never know what might happen, man. Give it a try.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Coach Kristin. Thank you for being on Inspinar. It was an absolute delight to have you. I will close the episode with my parting message. Let's reconnect with what matters. Let's reconnect with real life. Let's reconnect with health, energy, joy, and spirit. Let's ungrip our devices and grip life. I will see you next week. Thank you, everyone.